Sometimes all it takes is a week away from home, a change of scenery, a detail out of place. I had deluded myself that it would just be a short break from the routine, a bit of relaxation, a few days in the pool, a sunbath, and instead what happened there in that elegant silent villa boiling with secrets stripped me of all control. Sign up if you want to find out how dangerous desire can become. It was a scorching afternoon, one of those in which the sun beats down mercilessly and the air smells of chlorine and hot skin. Sergio, my husband, had decided to spend a few days at his parents' house to help his father with some chores. To be honest, the idea of spending an entire week there didn't excite me at all, but he insisted it would be relaxing, a kind of break from the routine. So I let myself be convinced. We arrived at the villa in the early afternoon. The house was large, elegant, almost regal, with those white columns that gave it an aristocratic air, and that well-kept garden that led straight to a crystalline swimming pool. His mother, Laura, welcomed us with her usual warmth, while his father, Francesco, was already busy fiddling with something in the lawn. Francis, he was one of those men who don't go unnoticed, a mature charm, still full of vigor, with that toned body forged by years of exercise. Every time I saw him, I felt a thrill that was difficult to explain, and even that day when he greeted me with his deep gaze and that smile that seemed to read inside, my heart accelerated imperceptibly. The first days passed peacefully. The house was full of chatter, laughter, and shared moments. Sergio was happy. You could see it. I, on the other hand, even though I was trying to let go, felt a strange tension, a subtle restlessness, as if I was being watched even when I was alone. One afternoon, taking advantage of the absence of Sergio and his mother who were out running errands, I decided to carve out a moment for myself. I wore my favorite bikini, the one that made me feel beautiful, alive, desirable, and I went towards the swimming pool. The water was clear and inviting, the sun very warm on the skin. I immersed myself with a slow dive, letting the coolness envelop me completely. I swam for a long time, clearing my mind until I saw him. Francis, he was there, standing on the terrace, a glass in his hand, his gaze fixed on me. His eyes were not those of any father-in-law. There was something more, something burning beneath the surface. He walked down the stairs calmly, as if each step were a silent message. I felt a shiver run down my spine as he approached, without haste, but with a decision that made you tremble. When he reached the edge, he casually took off his shirt and then dove in. The water seemed to welcome him with the same thrill that I felt inside. In a few moments he was in front of me, very close, his wet face, his intense gaze, his low voice full of something I didn't even dare mention. I felt my heart beat faster. I was in a gray area, between temptation and awareness. His presence was magnetic, hypnotic. He didn't say much, but his body spoke. The way he approached, the way his gaze stopped on my curves, everything about him seemed designed to seduce me without haste, but with surgical precision. When his hand touched my arm underwater, almost by chance, my breath stopped in my chest. It was just a touch, but it went through me like a bolt. I told myself I had to stop, which wasn't right, but that voice inside me was feeble, lost in the vortex of desire. I mentally reminded him who I was, who he was, but it was like talking to the wind. Reality dissolved in the hot water, in his eyes that never stopped scrutinizing me as if he wanted to read my soul, or maybe just undress me with his gaze. I felt vulnerable and alive at the same time, as if someone had awakened something I had forgotten, Every word that fell from his lips was an invitation in disguise. Every movement, an unspoken promise. He told me, without actually saying it, that Sergio was a good guy. But I deserved more, better, to be desired, appreciated, loved in the right way. Those words affected me more than I wanted to admit, because deep down a part of me believed it. In that moment, immersed in the water and in the silence full of tension, I seemed to be suspended between two worlds. The one I knew, made of rules, duties, appearances, and another made of impulses, of bodies that seek each other, of desires that cannot always be confessed. I was there, a few centimeters from a man who wasn't mine, but who at that moment seemed to know exactly how to make me feel seen and desired. Those words hit me like a bolt of lightning, because deep down, a part of me knew he wasn't lying. Sergio had always been a thoughtful, present man, but recently something had gone off. Overwhelmed by work, by his 1,000 occupations, he seemed to no longer see me, not as a woman. I, on the other hand, I felt neglected, invisible. At that moment, immersed in that warm water, with my body touched by the current and my heart caught between fear and desire, I began to wonder if perhaps Francesco had really grasped something that I myself was trying to ignore. I tried to move the conversation to a lighter level, but I couldn't hide that hint of curiosity that was now burning inside me. Francesco did not respond immediately. He just raised his hand, and with a light, almost imperceptible touch, caressed my face. I closed my eyes instinctively, as if that gesture had the power to melt my defenses. When I opened them again, his eyes were still there, glued to mine. In that look there was a silent challenge, an unspoken promise. I tried to convince myself that it couldn't be done, that it wasn't right. But those words, even in my head, sounded hollow. Francesco didn't say anything, but his smile already knew the answer. The water around us seemed to be getting warmer. The tension was palpable, almost dense. Then I felt his hand travel down my back, a slow, firm touch that sent a shiver down my spine. He said he would stop if I only asked him, but the truth was another. I didn't want him to stop. I don't know how I got to that point. I don't even know when the line between right and wrong dissolved, but part of me longed to know what would happen if I didn't back out. My heart was beating so hard it made my chest tremble. I tried to tell him no, but those words were just sounds without force. And then it happened. He took me by the waist with disarming delicacy, and my body reacted even before my mind could oppose. Our skins, still wet, touched. The sensation was electric, as if something forbidden had finally found its way out into the open. It was a dream full of sensations, which I didn't want to interrupt. I felt my breathing quicken. His touch made me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten. His lips were inches from mine, and the heat of his breath on my skin made me close my eyes once again. We were suspended, motionless, but inside me there was a whirlwind. He didn't move immediately. He stood there, still, as if waiting for a signal from me. His every gesture was controlled, attentive, respectful, but full of intention. And I didn't do anything to stop him. I looked at him. He nodded, an almost imperceptible gesture, but sufficient. His lips touched mine with an unexpected sweetness. It was a light kiss, as if he wanted to savor every emotion, every hesitation. Then slowly, it became more intense, deeper. I felt his hands tighten around my waist, and my arms, as if driven by their own will, rose to seek his neck. Everything else disappeared. The world, duties, thoughts. Only that moment existed. I could taste the wine on his lips, a sweet and pungent aftertaste at the same time, like a sin that tastes like pleasure. My body responded with a passion that I thought was dormant, forgotten. Every break collapsed. Every rule vanished. Sergio, the marriage, the consequences. Everything dissolved. There was only him, Francis, his warmth, his desire, and the way it made me feel, wanted, seen, alive. I pulled away from him for a moment to catch my breath. Our eyes met again. I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before, a sincere depth mixed with desire. He asked me, in a small voice, if I was really sure. No words were needed. He nodded once again. Contrasting emotions exploded inside me. Excitement, fear, guilt, but also a sense of freedom, raw and overwhelming. It was as if, for the first time, I was doing something just for me. If something in you has moved listening to this story, then stay. Press sign up and let yourself be tempted again, one story at a time. His smile was reassuring, warm. As if he had read inside me, he said that I shouldn't feel guilty, that sometimes, to find ourselves, we have to stop pretending and follow what makes us alive. Those words penetrated me like sweet blades, because they were true, because I was choosing, with awareness. I approached again. I looked for his hug. This time, the kiss was different, urgent, hungry, filled with a passion that overwhelmed every thought. His hands ran along my back confidently, while I held on to him as if I never wanted to leave him again. The water seemed to boil around us, enveloping us like a warm and complicit blanket. I realized, with a shudder, that I didn't want to stop anymore. And maybe, at that point, I wouldn't even have been able to. I was too involved, too attracted by that man, by his charisma, and by everything that, with a single look, he managed to awaken within me. It was as if I had found a part of myself that I had let go without realizing it. Something that had remained buried under years of duties, silences, and habits. Francesco looked at me with eyes that burned with desire. No words were needed. That firm, determined look of his was enough to tell me everything. We entered the house without speaking, dripping wet, leaving a trail on the polished floor. My mind was a tangle of questions, but my heart was racing faster than my thoughts. He took my hand with a confidence that took my breath away. His closeness was magnetic, every inch of my skin reacting to his touch. He led me down the hall to a small, secluded room, away from prying eyes. When he closed the door behind us, the sound of the lock startled me. I was alone with him, with the man who was reawakening desires that I thought were dormant. I turned and saw him approaching. Every step was a promise. I found myself with my back against the cold wall, while the heat of his body invaded my space. His breathing became short, his mind foggy. Contrasting emotions stirred inside me: desire, fear, guilt. But he was the one who kept me there, with his determined calm, with that voice that left no room for escape. He didn't need to ask me questions. My body was already responding for me. I knew I was crossing a line, yet I couldn't stop. When he touched my face with his fingers, a light caress, I closed my eyes. There was a sweetness in that gesture that disarmed me. I let myself go. His lips met mine, and it was like exploding, a deep, overwhelming kiss that made all resistance collapse. His hands began to explore me slowly and surely. Every touch was a fire igniting under the skin. I felt alive, finally, free, lost in the vortex of that forbidden passion. His kisses moved to my neck, and my body responded with uncontrollable shudders. There was no reason anymore, only instinct. Without my being able to resist, he picked me up easily and carried me to the bed. and there everything became more intense. Sighs mixed with moans. Bodies sought and found each other with no more inhibitions. Time stopped. Nothing existed other than the two of us, in that moment stolen from the world. Afterwards, we stayed in each other's arms. I could feel his heart beating under my cheek as my breathing slowly returned to normal. When I stood up, I tried to straighten my bathing suit with trembling fingers. Francesco observed me, silent. He asked me if I regretted it. I didn't know what to answer. A sense of guilt arose within me, but it was mixed with a pleasure that was difficult to ignore. I didn't know what to think. I didn't even know who I was at the time. But I knew one thing. What had happened between us could never be undone again. He told me that no one should know. I nodded, even though I knew how difficult it would be. I returned to my room with a heavy heart and a confused mind. I still had his smell on me, the taste of his lips on mine. I closed my eyes and relived every touch, every sigh. I felt excited, overwhelmed, but also deeply shaken, yet I couldn't fully repent. When I returned, Sergio was awake. He greeted me with a smile, asking me about the bathroom. I tried to smile back, lying sweetly. I told him it was refreshing, but inside I felt a punch in my stomach. The guilt was stronger now, more real. Over the next few days, I tried to act normal, but something inside me was broken. And every time I met Francesco's gaze, that invisible thread that bound us vibrated strongly. He behaved as always, courteous, present, as if nothing had happened. But I felt it. Every gesture, every word, every silence between us was filled with what we had shared. And when Sergio, perhaps sensing something, invited me to go down to the pool with him to relax, I couldn't say no. We went down together, and there, on a deck chair, was Francesco. The sunglasses were not enough to hide the intensity of his gaze. I felt it on me, like a caress that warmed even from a distance. I tried to ignore him, to focus on Sergio, but every corner of that house seemed to remind me of my betrayal. One afternoon, while Sergio left for a phone call, Francesco grabbed my arm and pulled me into a hidden corner near the pool. He told me I needed to calm down. Sergio was starting to notice something, and I, in that moment, understood how thin the line was between desire and ruin. I broke free from his grip, my heart hammering in my chest as if it wanted to escape from my body. A part of me wanted to stay, to get lost in that secret intimacy again. But the other one, the rational one, was screaming. I couldn't go on like this. Pretend every day, look Sergio in the eyes and lie to him as if nothing had happened. I held back tears with difficulty as I whispered to myself that I had to stop. Francesco ran a hand through his hair, visibly shaken. He tried to rationalize, to minimize what had happened between us. He said it was just a mistake, a moment of weakness to be forgotten. But those words, so cold, cut me inside. For him it had only been a moment. And for me, I felt a sharp pang, as if he were betraying me a second time, this time not in my body but in my soul. Deep down I knew it wasn't just a mistake. It had been an explosion of truth, a forbidden parenthesis that had uncovered desires that had been hidden for too long, and he knew it. Even if he looked down, even if he tried to deny it, he knew that we had crossed a line from which there was no turning back. But his choice was clear. Bury everything. Forget, move on, as if nothing had ever happened. Those words weighed on me like a chain. I pretended to nod, to accept, but a tight, painful knot formed inside me. I should have lived with the secret, continue every day, as if I were the same woman as before, as if that room, that bed, those muffled moans had never existed. But I was no longer the same. I had changed profoundly, and the thought of having to pretend for the rest of my life suffocated me. That evening, at dinner, while Francesco and Sergio chatted calmly, I stared at my plate as if it could give me an answer. Every bite seemed impossible to swallow. Sergio watched me with a worried look, trying to understand what was happening. I tried to smile at him, to seem present, but inside I was elsewhere. I was still there, with Francesco on me, with my skin remembering every touch, every whisper. After dinner, when Francesco retired, Sergio took my hand. I felt his sincere warmth, his disarming tenderness. He asked me if something was wrong, and that's when my mask started to fail. Tears welled up in my eyes before I could even control them. I was about to speak. I was there to confess everything, to free myself from the weight that was consuming me. But just as the words were about to come out, Francesco appeared in the doorway, as if he knew, as if he had come to save me from myself. He said I was just tired, that the trip had tried us all. His voice was calm, reassuring, yet I felt the poison beneath that calm. He was putting an end to my rebellion, bringing me back to silence. Sergio searched my eyes to see if it was true. I pretended to nod with a tired smile, but I knew that tiredness would never leave me again. It was the price of my silence. Francesco gave me a quick look before leaving. In those eyes there were 1,000 emotions, relief, guilt, desire still alive, and I understood in that instant that my punishment would be that eternal silence, living with the weight of what we had done, with that invisible bond that continued to hold us, even if we pretended it didn't exist. Nothing would ever be the same again, not for me, not for him, nor for Sergio, even if he didn't know it. And every day from that moment on I would have to wear the smile of a faithful woman, while the memory of a body that wasn't hers still burned inside me. If you want to receive new videos of the series, write, "I want the sequel," in the comments. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to receive a preview of future publications. Thank you.